Everybody, this is chapter 5, section 1. This deals with slope. This is kind of a really important chapter. A lot of things we look at graphs and things you're going to use again and again in other math classes. So really important you go back and look at your notes, make sure that you're asking for help, and make sure you get your classwork done on this so that you can really get a good practice on this, okay? So once again, too, if I go a little too fast, hit pause, make sure that you get your notes caught up, and then come back and hit play and just keep going with your notes, okay? So you got a couple definitions here first, rate of change and slope. They're both basically the same thing, and so we kind of tend to use slope a little bit more than rate of change is, what we're talking about, okay? In slope, the vertical change over the horizontal change, that's called the rise over the run. The vertical change is the y values on a graph, and the horizontal change is the x value. And we'll write slope in terms of rise over the run, so the y's over the x's. Okay. And then you have a formula here that we use a lot. You're just going to have to memorize this and be able to continue to use this. So this will find you a slope. You need 2 points on a line that's on a graph, and you're going to take the y values and subtract them and put it over the x values and subtract them. Okay, so it's really important, one, that you keep that straight. If you mess up kind of the order or whatever, you're not going to get the correct answer. Okay. Couple rules that you have to have, special rules that we deal with lines, that when you do your slope, you're going to get, if I do that little formula, I get a 0 at the top of my my fraction over any kind of number, whether it's a negative or a positive. It just can't be 0. My slope is going to be 0, so that's my m. Okay. And then sometimes I do my math in that little formula, and I get a number on top, positive or negative, but not 0, and I get 0 on the bottom. Math doesn't allow me to have 0 as a denominator, okay? So that's called undefined, and so therefore with my m, my slope, I'm not going to have a slope, all right? So those two special rules kind of go down here with this, these two examples. If I look at a line on a graph and I just find 2 points on the line, how many do I go up? Well, I went up 0, but I went over, I think I went over 5. So I get a 0 over 5, which is a slope of 0. Okay. When I look at a line that's vertical, find 2 points on the line. How many did I go up? I think I went up 3 from one point to the next. But I didn't go anywhere left or right. It just went straight up. So that's how I got a 0 here in the denominator. And I can't have that, so I get no slope. All right. Okay, and then a couple things here. How do you use it? Sometimes you get this table. Now remember that the left-hand side of the table, we call those the x's. The right-hand side is the y's. And I'm going to use those points in my slope formula. So what I did was I took the 2 points here, the first 2 points for this marching band. They're marching a certain distance over a certain period of time. And if I look at these numbers, they all kind of change the same, so that's good. If I look at the time that they're marching, they all change the same. So I take the 2 points from y, and I take the same values for the x's, and I subtract them, and I get a rate of 260 feet per minute is how much they're marching. Okay, so that's just taking the first two now. But this, if I had a graph, I could graph those on a line, and if I took any 2 points, so I'm going to take the last y value and the first y value and subtract it, and then I take the same x values and subtract it, I get 780 over 3. And I always want to reduce this, and if I reduce it, I get 260 over 1. Okay, so that's the same rate as I did previously with the other two numbers. So here my slopes are are the same. So it doesn't matter what I use or pick. Okay. So that's using a table. Using a graph, I look at my line, and where does my line meet a couple of grid points? And they meet, grid points are the X and Y values, the numbers on a line, on a graph, sorry. And I look for two other ones. So if I look there, my line actually crosses 2 points. So what did I do between those 2 points? So you read a graph like you read a book. You read a book left to right. What's my line doing as I go left to right? It's going up. So I'm going to count up 2 and over 3. So I'm kind of making a little triangle there. And so I went up 2, positive number, and I went over 3. I always go to the right. Okay. If you look at this graph, you know, what's the line doing as I read a book left to right? It's going down. So that's going to tell me I'm taking the negative slope. So I want to go down and over. And between those two, I went down 4 and over 5. So I got a negative slope of negative 4 over 5. Okay. So that's just counting squares on a graph and be able to get your slope. In this last example, we have 2 points, and we want to use that slope formula. Okay, so mine's a little bit different here. You know, I flip the y's around, and it's okay. You're gonna get the same answer. It's, some kids like it this way anyway, so a little bit different what the book might do. But always label your 2 points. Okay, you have your first point, your first point, your second point, your second point. So that's what the 1s and 2s represent. Just identifying things for you. And after that, then we go and plug it in. So my first y value was 0, and it was subtracting. Let me erase this and start over again. It was subtracting a negative 2. Okay. My x value was negative 1 minus, you got to remember these minus signs are part of the formula, minus 3. So remember, you're going to change the signs here, make that a positive 2, and negative 1 minus 3 gives me a negative 4. And I always want to reduce these. These are fractions. They represent slope. It's rise over run. So I have negative 1 over 2. Okay, so rise over the run. So it's going to tell me to go down 1 and over 2 from one point to the next. Okay. All right. So once again, make sure that you're doing all your classwork. Make sure if you have any questions, please ask, and then we'll make sure that we get you kind of caught up. All right. Take care.